Jai Shri Radhe, Sab Vaishnav ko Jai Shri Krishna, Shri Vallabhadesha ki Jai. This is the day 92 of our readings, continuing with the Varta of Surdas ji, part 7. There was a young Brajvasi boy named Gopal who helped Surdas with all his tasks. One day when Surdas had sat down to partake of Mahaprasad, he asked Gopal to bring him a pot of water. Gopal told Surdas that he would go and fetch the water while he was having his prasad. Having said this, Gopal went off to fetch some cow dung. On the way, he met some Vaishnavas and he began to chat with them. He forgot all about getting the water for Surdas. Surdas was eating when a lump of food got stuck in his throat. With his left hand, he tried to find the water, but he could not. He could not speak out either because of the food stuck in his throat. He became very disturbed. Srinathji himself came to Surdas and put his own water pot next to Surdas and left, and Surdasji drank from it. Gopal suddenly remembered that he had not given Surdas any water to drink, and he came running there. By that time, Surdas had finished his prasad and got up. Gopal Brajvasi arrived there and asked him, "You have finished your Mahaprasad. How did you get water to drink? I had gone to fetch cow dung and forgotten to bring you any water because I was talking to some Vaishnavas. That is why I have come running." Surdas replied, "Why did you get the name Gopal? The only Gopal is Srinathji. He himself today saved my life. I had such a lump stuck in my throat that it could only be loosened by water, and I could not even call out. I was going mad, but then my hand found a pot of water and I drank from it. I thought it was you who had put it there. Now you are telling me that it was not you who brought it. Therefore it must have been Gopal that lives in the temple who brought it here. Have a look and tell me what the pot looks like." Gopal Vrajvasi then went to where Surdas had been sitting to take prasad and saw that it was a water pot made of gold. He picked it up and returned to Surdas, telling him that it must have come from the temple since it was made of gold. Surdas then said to Gopal, "You have done a very bad thing, forcing Sri Thakurji to make so much effort for me. He had to come here with the pot of water. Now keep his pot very safe. When Sri Gosaiji wakes up, you must go there and return it to him." Gopal went to Sri Gosaiji and after paying his respects, he placed the water pot in front of him. Sri Gosaiji asked him how he had happened to come have it, because it belonged to Sri Govardhandar. Gopal Das humbly answered, "O Maharaj, I have committed this offence." He proceeded to tell everything. When Sri Gosaiji heard all of this, he immediately bathed, procured the water pot, put a fresh cloth around it, and quickly replaced it in the temple. After Sri Govardhandara had drunk from it, he asked him, "Today you saved Surdas. Apart from you, who will thus protect the Vaishnavas?" Srinathji replied, Surdas had a lump stuck in his throat and was suffering. That is why I went there and gave him the pot of water. Surdas was suffering in pain, so I was too. Great Vaishnavas and I are one and the same. Part 7 continues. The doors of the temple opened for the afternoon services. Surdas came there to have the holy sight of the Lord. Sri Gosaiji then placed the afternoon offerings in front of the Lord and then came to speak with Surdas. "Today Gopal did you a great favour." Surdas replied, "O Maharaj, this all happened with your blessings. Otherwise Srinathji would never even have known about such a great sinner as myself. He accepts us through the honour of Sri Acharyaji." Sri Gosaiji said, "You are a fine Vaishnava. Only such great Vaishnavas have this standard of humility." In this way, Surdas was a great vessel of Sri Acharyaji's grace. Part 8. Below Srinathji's temple is the village of Gopalpur, now named Jetipura. One businessman lived there. He was so attached to his home and business that he had never even been up to have Srinathji's holy sight. He had not even surrendered to Sri Gosaiji. His shop was at the foot of the Sri Giriraj mountain. Every day when he opened up his shop, he would ask the Vaishnavas who had been up to the temple what Srinathji was wearing that day. The Vaishnavas would tell him, and then he would praise Srinathji's adornment in front of any Vaishnava who came to his shop. "Oh, how wonderful Srinathji's ornaments are today! How extraordinary he looks!" He spoke like this, but never actually had the holy sight of Srinathji. He wore tulsi necklaces and donned a forehead mark and lovely sandalwood paste. He did this all as a show only. He would also speak very kindly to the Vaishnavas, and so they would purchase all their supplies from him. In this way, he hypocritically deceived all the Vaishnavas who believed him. He spent a single penny. He passed 7 years in this manner. One day that businessman addressed Surdas, "Oh, Surdasji, did you see the Lord's amazing adornment today? You never buy anything from my shop and you never come here. You are a great Vaishnava. What offence have I made that you never ever buy from me? Think of my shop as your own. I am a servant of Vaishnavas like you, so please bless me." Surdas thought to himself, "What sweet words he spouts, but his only motive is profit. Now I must end his deception. He has never had the holy sight of Srinathji, so now I will make him do that and help him to become a Vaishnava." With this in mind, Surdas addressed him. "You have never even seen the Lord, and you are not a Vaishnava. That is why I never come to your shop. You should now admit that you have never had Srinathji's holy sight." Hearing this, the businessman became very anxious. "Please don't tell anyone else," he begged. "I only don't go because I would miss making sales if Vaishnavas come here whilst I was out and would buy from somewhere else. Then how would I survive? Also, I don't have anyone who would come to tell me that the temple was open so that I could quickly run up and see the Lord." Surdas asked him if he would agree to go with him if he came to fetch him. The shopkeeper said he would go with him. "I really do want to go." Surdas said he would come in the afternoon. He then left, but when the conch shell announced the beginning of the afternoon services, Surdasji came back to the shop and said, "Oh, come on, the temple is ready to open, let's go." The shopkeeper said that this was the time that all the customers would come to him, so he asked Surdas to tell him when the doors were open, and he would go then. Surdas went up to Srinathji's temple and sang for the Lord. Afterwards, when it was time for the next service, Surdas went down to see the shopkeeper. "Come on," he said, "it is time for the holy sight of Srinathji." The shopkeeper made another excuse that this was the time for the cows to return to the village from the forest, and that if he left his shop unattended, the cows would come and eat his entire stock. He asked Surdas to tell him when the next period of darshan would be, and by then the cows would have all gone home. Surdas went up to the temple and had the holy sight of the Lord at both the next two services, Bhoga and Sandhya. Then it was time for this waving of lights ceremony before the Lord would retire for the night. Surdas went down and informed the shopkeeper. "Come on, it's time," he said. The shopkeeper said to Surdas, "You have made a lot of effort on my behalf today. This time is when I light the lamps for Lakshmiji to come. If I fail to do so, she will turn around and go back. Also, anyone might come and steal from my shop, so then what will I do? The best thing for me is to do is come with you early in the morning, and I will only call the shopkeeper, open the shop after I have done so. Please call me when the temple is about to open for the morning service. I am sorry to have made you run about today." Surdasji went up to the temple and saw Srinathji there. He sang a poem for the Lord's nighttime service. The next morning, after bathing, Surdas came to the shopkeeper and told him that it was time for the morning service, so he should come with him. "Oh, Surdasji," said the businessman, "it is time for me to sweep the shop now. If my first customer of the day should turn away without making his purchase, then my whole day will be unlucky. Let me just open up the shop, and I will come with you when the doors open for the sight of the Lord's adornment." Surdas went to the early morning service. Then he came down to the shopkeeper when it was time to go and see the Lord's adornment. The shopkeeper's excuse this time was that he had not yet made any sales, and the cows were walking about. "However," he said, "I will definitely come to see the Lord after his midday meal. You have been running after me since yesterday. You are a great Vaishnava." Surdasji went up to see Srinathji and sang in front of him again. It was time for the waving of the light ceremony after the lunchtime service, and Surdas again called the shopkeeper. "Will you come now?" he said. "How can I come now?" came the reply. "This is the time when the Vaishnavas will come down from the temple to make their purchases. I am old and cannot go and come back quickly. This is the time to make good sales, so I must attend to the shop. I will definitely go up for the afternoon service." In this way, Surdas kept on that shopkeeper's case for 3 whole days, but that greedy man never made it to go and see Srinathji, not even once. On the 4th day, Surdas bathed and went up to Srinathji early in the morning. He thought to himself, "For 3 days he has been making excuses. Now if he does not come, I shall have to make him afraid of something in order to persuade him to come up with me." Surdas approached the shopkeeper and said, "For 3 days you have been avoiding coming with me. You must come today." The shopkeeper started up again. "I will come when it is time to see the Lord's adornment," he said. after I have made my first sales. Surdas then threatened him, if you do not come now, I will tell all the Vaishnavas what you really are, that you are a liar and have never once had the holy sight of Srinathji. You are not really a Vaishnava. None of them will ever purchase another thing from you. I will sing all sorts of poems about you in various meters and your dishonesty. Surdas then sang this little poem. Today, tomorrow, in the Rag Bhairav. Today, tomorrow, and the day after I have work to do. I have had work to do since the day I was born, and have thence forgotten Sri Hari's feet. I think of work whenever I am awake or asleep, and I will be doing so when I die. Surdas the poet now states, give up this work addiction, remember the dark and beautiful Lord, and take shelter in him alone. Surdas sang this to the shopkeeper at that very moment. He began to fear, so he fell at Surdas's feet and begged, please do not compose any more songs about me. Please do not tell anyone about me. I am coming with you right now. The shopkeeper went with Surdas. When the doors opened to the early morning service, Surdas said to Srinathji, O Maharaj, this businessman is a divine soul. Please attract his mind to you so that he can be uplifted. He lives in the village below your flag. Srinathji replied, he may live close to me, but he does not know me. It is through the kindness of great devotees like yourself that such a soul can attain me. Bhav Prakash. Many types of embodied souls and species live within the waters of the Yamunaji and the Ganga rivers. Does this mean that they are all liberated souls? Are flies, mosquitoes, ants, and all the rest of the Lord's creatures totally liberated beings? They can only be liberated if they attain the company of great uplifted Vaishnavas. Then they can attain the Lord. Through the company of an accomplished Vaishnav, the attitude of service arises in the heart, and then only can they become the recipients of grace. Part 8 continued. Having said that, Srinathji granted his vision to that shopkeeper in such a way that his mind was completely stolen. When the curtains closed on the early morning service, the shopkeeper grasped Surdas's feet and said, O Maharaj, I have wasted my whole life in collecting money. I have plenty of wealth. Now please tell me how and where to spend it, and I shall do exactly that. Also please take me to Sri Gosaiji so that I might be initiated as a Vaishnava. Surdas told him to bathe, and then without touching anything or anyone, to come and sit down. At that moment, Sri Gosaiji finished adorning the Lord, and Surdas humbly entreated him to accept the shopkeeper as his disciple. Sri Gosaiji said to Surdas, how nice of you to have reigned in this 60-year-old man, otherwise his entire wealth would have been wasted. Sri Gosaiji sat the shopkeeper down close to Srinathji, and he initiated him with the Lord's name and then with Brahma Sambandha. His intelligence was immediately purified. He would go to everyday service throughout the day, and he donated immense amounts to Srinathji. He funded clothes and jewellery for Srinathji along with supplies, and he accepted them. One day the shopkeeper said to Surdas, it is only with your grace that I have had the holy sight of Sri Govardhanathji and become a Vaishnava. Please can you now arrange for the Lord himself to accept me and liberate me from the joys and grief of the material world. Surdasji in reply sang the following composition, and this following composition will be read tomorrow on day 92. So Jai Shri Krishna, Shri Vallabhadesha ki Jai, Jai Jai Shri Radhe.